Are you guys excited? Good, good. All right. Where should I sit? That one? This one? This one. They're both pointing at the same chair. Behind here are two camera people because we are filming this for the TV show, which means if you hear something funny, what are you going to do? If you hear something outrageous, what are you going to do? I'll buy it. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please welcome to the stage Alex Kapranos. How you going?
Pretty good.
Yeah? Hey, so I've heard that when you go on stage, you like to clear your mind. So is this like the worst possible idea for you to do before you go on stage later today?
Well, it's quite a few hours before we go on stage, but yeah, I don't like to do interviews immediately before going on stage because you end up thinking about that rather than losing yourself in the performance, you know. So
what do you do to kind of clear your mind between now and then?
I like to do as little as possible. Like I'll just sit and hang out with my pals in the band and just talk shit and just hang out.
Yep, fair enough. When you get up on stage, how is that moment when you realise that everyone knows every word to your songs and are singing along?
You see, the most magical moment is the moment when you walk from the side of the stage onto the stage. And it's kind of hard to describe. There's parallels in life, like, when you climb up to the highest diving board in the swimming baths and you jump off that. And it's the most thrilling moment in the world. Like, it's absolutely incredible. Yeah, best buzz in the world.
Can I take you back to the very beginning? Because as I understand it, Franz Ferdinand started in a kitchen. Is that? Tell me how accurate that is.
It's pretty accurate. Bob Hardy, our bass player, and I used to work in a kitchen. I was a chef, and he was a kitchen porter, a dishwasher, and we both used to be the last people to leave the kitchen of the restaurant because I would always do the desserts and he would always have to wash up the dishes from the desserts. So as we were waiting for the last couple, there's always that last couple hanging about at the end, like sort of having a romantic meal and dragging it out a little bit too long. We'd be waiting in the kitchen for them to finish. And as we were doing that, we'd be playing music to each other and talking about this imaginary band that we were going to get together and that eventually became Franz Ferdinand.
How much cooking brandy was consumed in that discussion?
A lot, yes. There was a shelf that had all of the sort of spirits and wine and stuff that was used in the cooking of the desserts, and we just used to neck that every night.
So what was the original image? Like when you guys were having those original discussions, what were your rules about what you did and didn't want to do as a band?
I mean, there'd be different things that we'd talk about. We'd talk about the music that we loved. We'd play each other's songs that we liked and why we liked them. But you'd sort of make rules and things, and I remember Bob saying that he wanted to make music that would move people and make people want to cry, and then we'd talk about things like if you were going to go on stage, wouldn't be one of those bands that seemed terrified of the audience. You wouldn't be afraid to look at people in the eye in the audience, and because and when it came to actually playing on stage, because we'd talked about all this stuff beforehand, we understood it, and it just all fell into place a lot more quickly.
So when you're up on a stage and you're looking at, let's say it's a smaller room, let's say it's earlier in your career, right? What is the art of making sure that everybody in the room is with you, right? Because that's the one thing, my earliest memory of watching Franz Ferdinand was that it didn't matter how big or small the room was, you were quite intent on making sure everybody was having fun. So I'm wondering, how do you think through that? Or is it something you think through at all?
I don't know if I think it through, but just now when I'm thinking about it, it's like prison psychology. If you want to be the tough guy when you go to jail, you've got to bring down the biggest bully in the prison. You've got to bring down the toughest guy.
I'm committed to this analogy.
At school as well. If you're going to be the number one kid in the school, you've got to beat up the toughest guy in the school. And it's like that when you go on stage as well. You've got to look for the most resistant part of the audience. There's no point winning over the people in the front who are going to be into it already. You've got to get the people at the back who are unsure. You've got to get them. You've got to win them. And yeah.
How long did it take you to work that out? And by the way, it was a good analogy. I'm into it. But how long did it take you to work out that was the best way to operate as a band? That was going to kind of ensure success on the night?
It became an instinctive thing for me. And I know for me, when I first started playing in bands when I was young, like when I was a teenager, I used to be terrified. And I think it's the natural instinct to be terrified when you go on stage. You know, it's quite scary to be in front of people, and you know, and still like things like public speaking, I still feel a bit nervous doing that sort of thing. Like, you know, I had to speak at Paul's wedding when he got married, and I was absolutely terrified. But I had this revelation, like years ago, before the band started, I went out one night with my girlfriend at the time and Paul and his girlfriend at the time, and we got drunk and did the karaoke one night, and I sang Bebopalula by Gene Vincent, and I totally ripped it up. I was amazing. Like, I was just so good.
Please tell me video of this exists
Oh,
somewhere.
it was before cell phones with cameras and that, so it doesn't exist. But no, it's funny though. Like, it was that realization, just no, I can be totally free doing this, even though it was like a trivial thing, like just a fun thing to do. That moment, it just became really just clear how I could do it, and you didn't need to be afraid. You just needed to enjoy it, and if you enjoy it, then you know other people probably are too.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about some of your recording experiences. Can you tell me about the time you turned some human bones into maracas?
Yeah, we I don't know. We had a skeleton in the studio.
As you do.
Yeah, it was just for decoration, really, and then we were looking for percussion, for percussive sounds, and so we used the skeleton.
What is the sound of a human bone as a maraca? What does it sound like?
There's a good kind of clunking sound.
Did at any point you think, yeah, this is a bit weird?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty tasteless.
So does it still exist on the song? Is it still there?
Yeah,
Can you hear it?
It's all over our third album. Yeah.
So the third album is also The Sound of Death.
Pretty much, yeah.
Long before music, I understand you went to divinity school.
I did, yeah.
Why?
Why? The arrogance of youth, that's why. Because I thought I was going to go and study philosophy at Glasgow University. And when you apply for university in the UK, I'm sure it's the same here, you apply for the course you want to do, then you've got to do an insurance offer, which is another course in case you don't get into the first one. But I was really arrogant and presumed I was going to go. But I failed my higher maths twice and ended up having to go to my insurance thing, which was, I just picked the very first one. You have a book that has a list of all of the courses you can do, and Aberdeen University Divinity was the first course. So
did you have any interest in any kind of religion before that? Or was this
Yeah,
just
of
like a
course.
roll of the dice?
Yeah, of course, religion is fascinating, and Christianity, whether you love it or hate it, it's shaped so much of Western culture. And so, yeah, it is a fascinating thing to study, but I lasted a good 7 months. I think I did pretty well. You know.
That's better. I did a media degree and I lasted about 3 months and dropped out.
Yeah.
But tell me about how you ended up exiting then.
How I ended up exiting? It was just like, it wasn't for me. It was with a bunch of, it was a lot of very dedicated blokes in their, middle-aged guys who'd had a career and wanted to become ministers, and I didn't. I was 17 and wanted to play music and smoke pot.
Concurrent to your music career, there was a period of time where you also became a food writer.
Sort of, yeah.
Well, you had a whole book that was a little bit about
yeah.
it. And I know you don't do so much of it these days.
Yeah.
But why is food a good way of... Because when you write about food, you're not really writing about food, you're writing about places that you visited on tour.
Right.
So why is food a good way of looking at a place when you visit it?
Well, it's because food's something that we do every day, like there's barely a day goes by when I don't eat, and...
you would hope, at the very least.
And so I guess I wanted a way to talk about where I was in the world and who I was with, and to find a constant. It's like, so like, here's this thing that we do every day, and it's different because I'm in this particular place with these particular people. And but I always, I did work in kitchens as well. Like when I dropped out of university, I got a job working in a kitchen, and I was a kitchen porter as well, a dishwasher, and became a chef eventually, and that sort of thing. I always loved working in kitchens because I think the kind of people that end up working in kitchens are very similar to the sort of people that end up in this world that I'm in now. They're the sort of social misfits, the kind that can't really handle a 9-to-5 job and probably overdo it a little bit. You know, all the freaks and misfits end up working in kitchens or following bands around the world.
I understand. You should absolutely feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I understand your first conscious experience of food was quite traumatic.
Yeah, when I was writing that book, I was trying to recall my first vivid experience of food, and like a lot of people nowadays, I have a peanut allergy, and my parents had moved house. They'd got this is in the mid-1970s. I was about 2 or 3 years old, and they'd moved into a new build, very 70s, and were having a dinner party to invite all the neighbours and their friends around and stuff, and they'd put all these nibbles out on the table, really 70s style, so like cheese on a cocktail stick with a bit of pineapple and
the
little
classics.
Tomatoes and twiglets and crisps, and I remember very vividly going around and tasting them all as a kid, and thinking do I, you know what it's like when you're a toddler and you're kind of going around and just trying stuff and it's there, so you're going to eat it. I remember trying them all, thinking ooh, pineapple, I like that. Cheese, maybe I might like that one day. And tomatoes, don't like them. And then trying the peanuts and thinking, oh God, what is this? This is absolutely horrific. And then beginning to throw up. And because it was a modern house, it had an open plan design. And so I walked around looking for my mum. My mum was out with the neighbour next door, and I didn't know this, so I was walking around yelling for my mother, being sick as I was yelling, sicking up all this rubbish I'd been eating off the coffee table, going round and round, sicking it up, trampling into the carpet, yelling for my mum, sicking it up, and then eventually she heard, I wondered what was happening. She wasn't very happy when she found me. No sympathy at all, no sympathy.
It's actually very traumatic when you say that.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
When you are making music now, how do you know when a song is done? Are you one of those people that can tinker forever? Or is it you hear it and go, yep, I can hear that in a car, I can hear that in a stadium?
I think you know pretty quickly if a song's good or if it's not. You just get a good buzz from it. Some songs, you need to work on them, and usually you do need to put a bit of effort into making a song properly flow and properly work. You can have the core of a good idea, and then the first bit can take seconds, and then you can spend another 3 weeks actually getting it properly finished. But no, you can usually tell quite quickly if there's something good there.
Of all the different albums that you've put out, which one was the steepest learning curve? And by that I mean a very profoundly different Alex went in to coming out the other side.
I think our third record we probably made unnecessarily difficult for ourselves.
Why? How does one make an unnecessarily difficult album?
We kind of had this theory that when you play something in a cycle, you totally lose yourself in it and you become hypnotized by it. We'd sort of heard this thing about James Brown, where he would get the JBs to record the songs that you hear Get Up Off of That Thing and stuff like that. What you're hearing is of a 3-minute song is actually 3 minutes in the middle of a 25-minute jam. And so when the band's all playing and really, really in the groove, that's when they kind of hit to the song then, and then they record that bit, or they edit out that bit. We kind of took it a step further, so every little section of the song had to come out of this bit, then edit it together, and we ended up each song was played for hours and hours and hours, and it was totally unnecessary. I mean, it sounded good, but it was just an unnecessary way to record.
Yeah, right. Of all the different songs that you've been involved in the creation of, what has taken the longest amount of time? And maybe you put it down and you came back to it a bunch of months later, but is there one that was just it was this albatross that you kept on returning to?
I'm trying to think. I can't remember. The funny thing is that a lot of the songs that take the longest are the songs that don't make it to the finished record.
Yeah, why is that? 'Cause I've heard a bunch of musicians
yeah.
say this over the years. Why do you reckon that is?
It's because they're rubbish. You know, like it's true. Like if it's taken that long, it's probably not a good song in the first place.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
like or the version that you're doing is just not right. I mean, I think spending too long on anything in the studio is the enemy of a good recording. Like I think you should be ready to play as a band, as musicians before you go into the studio. You should know how the song goes and go in and just do a really good performance of it. And there can be too much time spent fanning around, like really ruining songs, trying to work out what they're... I remember on our first record, there was a song on our first record called Tell Her Tonight, and we knew how to play it and it was good, but the producer wanted to make it this great big kind of overly dense, overproduced kind of thing. And we were there for 3 weeks to record it, and I'd say about 2.5 weeks of that recording session for that first album was actually spent on this stupid song. And by the time we like listened to the mixes, we were just like, man, that's bloody awful. Like, it is terrible. And then we went back to Glasgow and re-recorded it in, I don't know, 3 takes. And that was the one that we used in the end. So yeah, it's always the rubbish that takes too long.
Now I'm just going to go through albums and think, which one was the one that took too long?
Yeah, it's not there. It's never on it, you know. It's like
Franz has proven to be a band that's had incredible longevity, and I'm wondering, in all the things that have been written about Franz over the years, what is it that people get wrong about Franz Ferdinand, about the way it operates, about the way you guys interact with each other?
Oh, God. I don't know. I try not to think about what's written about us.
Really? You, like, when you put an album out, you're like, I'm not reading reviews.
Earlier on, I would read reviews because, you know, it's a novelty. And it's like, oh, my God, people are writing about us. That's amazing. But no, most artists say that they don't, but most do. And it takes a long time to develop the discipline to not read the stuff. And
so was it a gradual process or a moment where you're like, okay, I'm done, we're not doing this anymore?
I mean, there's so much chatter and nonsense talk nowadays with social media and blogs and everything online. There's too much chatter, and to distance yourself from it has to be a good thing.
What do you most want? This is going to sound weird, right? Because it sounds like a eulogistic question, but obviously you've got plenty of years left on Franz, right? But what do you want Franz to be remembered for? Do you think about it in those terms?
It's funny because you don't really know yourself. You don't know. And it always changes when a band either splits up or dies, you know. Like the way that, say, a really hulkingly huge example that's in our minds recently is Bowie. And the way that I love Bowie. Like I when I was growing up, totally worshipped Bowie, and you know, I still do totally love him. But the way that he is perceived in the public general consciousness now is such a contrast to, say, how he was perceived in the early 1990s when I was in my late teens. And I remember it was just sort of around about the period of Tin Machine or something like that. And he was not perceived in generally a favorable light. And I love the way that he's perceived now, and I love that people do appreciate what he's doing. But it's, and you know, I see it with other people as well, like Bruce Springsteen. I remember about 10 years ago, there was a complete shift in the way that he was perceived. And yeah.
So in that case, it's not necessarily about death then, because if Springsteen's had this sort of new resurgence...
Yeah, that's true. But you know, death has quite a big impact.
Well, it completely crystallizes you in a moment.
Well, it just, you know, anything that sort of like ends it, because then I think people don't like to completely idolize an artist or turn them into that sort of like mythical status until they've gone, because at that point you know that they can't cock up any further.
Out of curiosity, you met David Bowie. How was that moment? From recollection of reading stuff, it was quite awkward.
It was kind of awe-inspiring and farcical in equal parts. It was I loved him, so it was incredible to me. We came down. We did a gig in Roseland in New York, and we knew he was coming down, so we were all going, "Oh my God, that's amazing!" What's that? Oh, they are.
Thank you. You are welcome. I will take that.
Yay.
I really thought he would be heckled, so I'm into it.
That's lovely,
so
isn't it? Yeah.
we're back in the moment. You're playing a show in Roseland.
And it was just after he'd been ill. He'd had his heart attack, and it was the first time he'd been out since he'd had his heart attack. And he came back, and he came into the dressing room, and he was kind of in disguise. Like he was wearing like a cap pulled, because obviously he'd been out in public and didn't want to be recognized, so he had a cap on and sort of round John Lennon sunglasses and a big mustache, wearing a full Adidas tracksuit. He looked amazing.
Adidas tracksuit.
Oh, yeah.
Bowie in an Adidas tracksuit.
He looked incredible. It was really, really, really good. So he came back, and he was in the dressing room, and of course we were a little bit awkward. You know, it was very early on for us. We hadn't really met big famous people like that before, and so we were slightly intimidated. And he was a nice guy, and he could sense that we were a little intimidated. So he was trying to break the ice a little bit. So he kind of did an impersonation. He sort of said, "Hey, who's this?" And then he sort of put on an American accent and sort of said, "Hey guys, how's it going?" And we were like, I don't know. David, who is it? And he was like, "It's Courtney Tyler. And we were like, "Who's that?" The guy from the Dandy Warhols. And I was like, "All right, okay, yeah." So yeah, it was just a little bit.
You're really nailing this moment.
It was a little awkward, but then very nice, yeah.
You excited to get on stage later today?
Yeah, I can't wait. Yeah.
Ladies
I have a very, very special memory of Splendour. We first played here in 2004, so it was 14 years ago, and I just remember that it was in a tent at the time, and I just remember it going absolutely bananas, and like we'd never seen an audience like that before in our lives, and I've got goosebumps like all over me just now thinking about that last time we were here. It was incredible. So yeah, I'm very happy to be back here.
Are we all going to give him goosebumps again tonight?
Hey.
Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause for Alex.
Hey, thanks everyone. Cheers.
You guys stay right where you are. Lauren Mayberry will be up in just a second. How you guys going? You ready for Lauren? Will you please put your hands together for Lauren Mayberry? I feel like curtsying now. I don't know why I'm doing that. So much curtsying. How you going?
Do I use this?
Yes. So
Hi.
we have a microphone for the camera and a microphone
like,
for the
what?
people. We double up on microphones.
That's so fancy.
So fancy.
Yeah.
Hey, so this is a chat about your music, your life,
Very big
everything. But I want to start off by talking about mailboxes.
Mailboxes.
Yeah, I'm just going to wait for the music to wrap up.
concept.
One sec. Hey, there we go. I did want to start talking to you about mailboxes.
Okay.
I heard, and you should absolutely tell me if this is wrong or not, because it wouldn't be the first time I get something wrong, that when you guys go on tour, you would set up little mailboxes so people could send you letters.
I wondered where we were going. I was like, huh?
Where did you think I was going?
I don't know. I tend not to get a lot of post. I mostly just get bills and junk mail.
Because
So I
it's
was like,
2018.
Did you send me something? Yeah, we did
Not
that
yet.
on the last album. Yeah, we had like a fan club box thing, and people could put letters in. It made me realize though that not a lot of I am a millennial, I suppose. I'm on like the upper end. But not a lot of millennials watched kids' TV shows that had stamped addressed envelope situations.
Yeah,
So there was a lot of confusion about that.
We used to have Saturday Disney in Australia where they'd be like stamped lock address to French's Forest, and I
Yeah.
sent so many embarrassing drawings to that place.
Well, because we had like Blue Peter and like Live and Kicking and things like that. So yeah, we were like, if you put that in, then we'll write something back before we leave that country. But I think I may have overcommitted to that. So we haven't been doing it on this record just because there's a lot of fucking letters.
Well, I wanted to know what sort of letters
good,
you get. Like, what do people... Because I imagine it's quite intense, because you have quite an intense following.
It was really nice, to be honest. And I think it was a good for us emotionally or whatever, because there's so much bullshitty business stuff. Not that it's very important to be on top of your business, but you know, I feel like when you start a band, that's not what you started a band for, you know. And we never thought we would be in a band that anybody would really like, let alone like to this level. So I think it's really nice to like try and focus on that stuff. And I don't know, we grew up being in bands that had like street teams and message boards and things like that. So that's kind of, we try and transport that ethos into the band as it is now. So.
Do you ever remember any of the letters? Do any of them stay with you?
We have them. They're in the storage facility in Glasgow. So.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I guess what I was curious about is there's an intent to writing a letter, right? It takes a lot, in this day and age, it takes a lot more effort than scrolling some crap on the internet. And I wonder if that provokes a different kind of communication.
I think so. I think nobody was just kind of like, there wasn't anything, it was just a quick scrap of paper that had been thrown in the box. It was stuff that people had really like thought through and written down. And, you know, people share a lot of things with you about like what the songs mean to them and what the band means to them and how they're doing. And I don't know, like a lot of the time I feel like sometimes people just need to share something with somebody and like they don't know us personally as people, but they think, I don't know, if you can find an outlet or somewhere to put something. It's a really awful, scary world a lot of the time and people feel quite alone in it. So I feel like it's nice we can all be alone but together, I guess.
Fair enough. After the years you've been in churches, when you started off, it was just the three of you. You guys would do everything. But as you've sort of progressed, you've also worked with producers. And I understand you did a bit of like a speed dating round with a bunch of producers. But I wanted to ask you about an encounter you had where a producer made you watch Joan of Arc.
He did, yes. The Mila Jovovich version.
So why did a producer want you to watch Mila Jovovich giving a big anthemic sort of speech? What was that going to give you?
Well, it was a guy called Dave Stewart from the Eurythmics, a band that people may have heard of. And we were really excited that he wrote back to our email. We were like, he does want to do this? So yeah, it was the first day that we had met him, and he had researched the band in advance, I think, to figure out. He's a great songwriter, but like a really kind of old school style producer. I feel like producer now means a million different things that it didn't used to mean, but he definitely is that school where you like look inside people and try and like body scan them to see what their buttons are. And most of the time he's like really supportive, but he also can poke you in an uncomfortable way to kind of make you think, I suppose. And he had like queued up this scene on his...
Had it ready to go on a DVD player.
And it was like at 6 o'clock every day, apparently he makes a martini. So he was like, guys, have some martinis. And we were like, oh. So, and then Ian and Martin both had to leave because I think Martin was going to a work thing and Ian was going to the airport. And then I was like, okay, now it's me and like 3 half-empty martinis. And he was like, incidentally, I've queued up this scene on the screen. And then he said, I want you to watch that and like think about whether you're trying hard enough. And I was like, what? What?
That's a little bit passag.
Well,
Just
and then I was
bit?
like, that's offensive. I'm definitely trying hard enough. What do you mean? But then at the end of it, he was like, well, but maybe you're trying like 70%. And then he said, and I don't think this about myself because I'm really big-headed, but he was like, it seems to me that you want to be like a punk rock Joan of Arc of pop music, so just do it and stop complaining about it. And I was like, oh.
And what did you take away from that, out of curiosity?
Well, after I was like done crying or whatever, I don't know. I thought like, and I don't think about myself in that way, like, because I'm not a megalomaniac, egomaniac, crazy person. But I don't know. I think like a lot of the performance stuff is pretending to be those things. It's pretending to be like 100 times. What is that? That's a spider in Australia.
That's all right.
What kind? Oh, you just killed it. You didn't even know what one it was.
It's Australia. You killed them.
I thought there was...
No.
What's the one? A recluse? A brown recluse? Oh. What
We'll
was that?
never
Was just a
know.
little brown one. We don't know. And now it's smeared.
So, fun
Wow.
fact, I'm completely colorblind, so as a reflex, I just kill them all.
All right, you were like, don't break the story to talk about insects. You just killed it.
No, this is a good moment.
You're being the punk rock Joan of Arc of killing insects.
And that was how I injected my personality into this moment.
Well, yes, you were. It kind of fits. We're like, you're just, you're being 120% yourself, just killing shit.
Yeah. I used to have a boss that would always say to us at the beginning, was working on a TV show, and when we started the TV show, he said, all of you just need to be aggressively you. And it was like, it sounded great, but in practice you're like, what does that even mean? Like, what do you do? But I guess the same thing applies to that moment. What do you do with that advice, with that interpretation of you?
Yeah, well, I feel like I can apply it to like the performance part of the band more easily. Like aggressively me in real life is like aggressively crying over the TV or aggressively asleep. But I don't know, like that doesn't, I feel like if I did that in the performance, that doesn't really work, So I think I made a concerted effort after the first record to kind of figure out how to better communicate what we're trying to do. And it's not something that comes hugely naturally to me, I don't think. I would love to be, like, yeah. When I say this, people are like, you chose the wrong job, you're lying. But when I was growing up or whatever, I was never the person that was like, in the center of the room being like, look at me. So, stupid job choice.
Terrible. You've made
But,
a series of terrible life choices.
Well, and then I guess when he said that, I was like, yeah, well, you could always do more. I think you should always be pushing yourself and think, in terms of like performance and stuff, is this helping you communicate what you're trying to say? So,
before music, or maybe in the early days of music, you did a master's in...
I did, yeah.
And I'm going to see if I can remember it by heart. Images of femininity in women's magazines.
That was my boring thesis. Yes.
Yeah. But what I'm curious about is, what did you, having done that, having spent a lot of time researching and thinking about it, and then suddenly being in a position where you are being photographed and you're being put in photo shoots, what were the rules that you brought with you? That you spent all this time researching, you're like, okay, now I'm the subject of this. What are the rules about how I do and don't want to be represented?
Well, I think when we first started, people thought that, well, maybe this is my projection, but it seemed like people thought I was being really uptight or really like overly conscious about stuff. And I definitely was working a lot out of fear, which I don't know is great, but in hindsight, I'm like, well, I'm kind of glad that I had that background for it, because you see that a lot of the time people are really trusting and you do get manipulated, and you can't control what people do or say about you, but you can kind of try and control your narrative as much as possible. And so much of that kind of media around women, I think, is trying to take that narrative away and fit it into this pre-existing thing. So I think if I wasn't so suspicious about all that stuff, it would have been more difficult. And I don't know, it was just about figuring out what things, like we were lucky that people wanted to write about the band, but we were conscious of trying to say no to certain things just so you set the precedent. Because I think it's hard to put that genie back in the bottle after it's come out.
If you could change anything about the way we talk about women in pop music, what would you change?
The fact that we separate it into women in pop music. I don't know, like, I don't want to be a downer or whatever, but I'm kind of confident that there's never going to be a time in my creative career where I will be talked about in any way without a gender prefix on it. Like, that's always, at least now when people talk to our band about it, we have a more constructive conversation.
Yeah.
But even from the beginning of the band, all the questions were gendered. Even if you look at the way people write about the band, they're never like Martin and Ian are frolicking around the stage, flaunting their arms in black t-shirts.
I would like to see them frolic, though, later this afternoon.
Well, but things like that, and I'm like, so, it's always like wispy voiced and elven or diminutive, and they're short too. No one calls them diminutive.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The
they're in here.
The word sweet, I read a bunch of reviews over the last couple of years, particularly of the latest album, and the word sweet to describe your voice is like omnipotent. It's there all the time. How do you relate to words like that? Are you comfortable with them?
Looks like I'm drinking beer, but it's a health beverage.
A likely story, Mayberry. No one trusts you.
I was like, sweet. Oh, no. Well, I don't know. Like, I feel like there's definitely, like, it's tonally, like, if you're just talking about the straight-up tone of it, like, it is quite a pure, clear tone. But I think that that's what we try and work with when we're making the music. That means you can push things a bit further when it comes to the lyrics or it comes to the production. And I kind of like that, especially with lyrical stuff, because if you're just going off your first listen, people will be like, oh, that sounds nice. And then maybe like if you said something. And I don't know, I think in a way it gives me a chance to say things that maybe I couldn't say if my voice sounded differently.
And it's a tool. It's a tool that can be used in a bunch of different ways as well.
Yeah, I think so. And I don't know, I kind of like the idea that it's part of the skill set that allowed us to sneak in the side door. And then we've been really lucky. We've kind of written our own agenda for the most part. So
when I tweeted and Instagrammed about you coming and doing this, and I was inundated with like fan accounts.
Was it my mum?
Possibly. Like just like Lauren Mayberry fans. This is exciting. When it'll be at Line. And there's this whole world of like fan accounts that are set up for you, and it kind of struck me surprising because a lot of the narrative around churches and the internet has been about the negative things that people have said. And what I'm curious about is how do you relate to the internet now? How do you approach it when, because the internet is a part of being in a band in 2018. So how do you think about the internet these days?
Well, I feel like I spent a lot of time just trying to make sure I'm not negative about stuff, because I think there's a portion of it which is very negative and has been very unpleasant and continues to be so. But ultimately, like, the internet is kind of why we're here, because we put a song on SoundCloud and then it went on blogs and people talked about it. So, and I don't know, I kind of think that we're talking about like the street teamy kind of message board culture, like that is something that we've tried to kind of cultivate with the fan base of the band, and then they've done that themselves as well. And I think it's nice that if you can have like a community and a positive thing around that. But I think it'll always be one or the other, and I don't think I use the internet on a personal level, really. Like, I have a personal Instagram, but I'm not really like, hi, I'm here drinking iced coffee. This is exactly where I am. Come get me. So I'm like, no, never.
But do you feel like your ability to use the internet is different to what any other person that you went to school with is, simply because you are in public and you did attract like an array of really negative responses? Do you I guess what I'm curious about is, do you think it's unfair that you've had to curtail the way you use the internet in a way other people wouldn't necessarily have to?
I don't know if I think it's unfair. I think it just is what it is, you know? And I'm not the only person that happens to. I'm not the only woman that happens to. Like, I think I can now pretty much predict exactly what the comments will be about things, but I just don't need to look at it, you know? I think that was a helpful thing. Like, I think it's a balance. People are like, when we first talked about that stuff, people were like, well, if you're that sensitive, you shouldn't be in this job. I'm like, well, I don't know. I think there's a difference between people being like, oh, that record sucks, and someone being like, hey, I'm going to rape you. I'm like, whoa, one of these is
a very big defined junk.
And then when people are like, if you don't have thick enough skin, you shouldn't be in a band. I'm like, excuse me? What other job is this? Like, is that an appropriate response? So, yeah, I don't know. But
why do you think people have that opinion? Like, why do you think people have arrived at that as a legitimate opinion to have?
I think it's because maybe this is really, and it was a woman that said that. I remember it. It was like a woman that said that on Facebook. She was like, if you shouldn't be in a pop band if you don't want to take that. And then I was like, it's kind of messed. I don't know if I'm supposed to swear.
You can
it's kind
say
of messed up.
No, you can say what the fuck you want. It's fine.
Oh,
it's Australian TV. It's fine.
Well, but that made me extra sad because I was like, oh, then you've just I think we all do that. You internalize the messages that are put out to you, and in that moment, I was like, you've just soaked up this misogynist culture. And I definitely, there's things where you realize what you're like, oh, why do I want to do that? Oh, because like this is how we've grown up, and this is what we think is real and normal. So I think, I don't know, the conversation around it is different now for us than it was like 5-6 years ago. Like, there was a lot more me having to justify why I was being objectionable or something, whereas now it feels more like, it's kind of weird. A lot of the time it's the same or similar journalists that are like, now like, so, post Me Too, like, let's discuss. I'm like, you're the same guy that like 3 years ago would have been like, why are you doing this? So, I think that's a positive thing, but I don't really know.
I'm curious about the thing you said before about how both men and women sort of ingest the patriarchy. Let's go with that as our overarching definition of it, right? Have you ever had to unpick one of your own opinions because you're like, oh, wow, the only reason I have that opinion is because of the patriarchy?
Well, yeah. I remember being like 14 or 15 and really, really wanting to be liked, as all teenagers do. And there was a weird trend in my high school where people would buy stuff from this shop called USC. I don't know. It was like a kind of high street pseudo designer whatever shop. And nobody can afford that stuff. They can't. But there was a lot of like, oh, so-and-so's got a DKNY hoodie. You're going to save up for 4 months to get that. And then I remember one girl having this T-shirt with like a bunny on it. And I was like, oh, I really want to get this like T-shirt with a bunny on it. And then asking my dad, and he was like, oh, ask your mother. And then I showed it to my mother, and she was like, that's not, like, that's a Playboy bunny. And then explaining to me what Playboy was. And I was like, I don't care. Like, I just want it. And then now I'm like, my God. Can you imagine? Like, and I was like, well, not like, you know, I just, like, now if somebody was like, do you want to wear clothing with anything to do with Hugh Hefner on it, I'd be like, no, over my dead body.
But there was that weird moment, right, in like the late 90s, early 2000s where they thought they could turn like Playboy into not Playboy. Like they thought they could reclaim it as a
Yes,
as a
I
concept.
love that chat. Like I'm not going to say what magazine it is, but has been rebranded. And then they keep being like, do you guys want to like be interviewed for this magazine? The guys can't come. I'm like, oh, they're like, it's a men's lifestyle magazine now. I'm like, a spade is a spade. I don't care what cover you put on it. Like years and years of disgusting shit. It's not like obliterated because you were like, no, we changed it because it wasn't selling. Like, shut up. But
please tell me you actually said that. I want to be
well,
there for that conversation.
I say that to our manager, who's just like, she's not available. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm constantly trying to figure stuff out. Like I don't have all the answers to anything, and my opinions on things now are definitely different than they were when I was like 20. You know, and I don't know. I think I'm definitely conflicted about things like that because. And I've seen stuff recently where it's like Playboy is trying to be more alternative and it's getting more alternative models and things. And, you know, I do understand the argument where it is powerful for women to be taking control of their bodies and their narrative. And I'm like, great, I totally understand that. I don't really know if for me, I think that can be done within the parameters of Playboy because what it represents and who it makes money for and who the demographic is. But I'm never going to have to grapple with that issue because I'm never going to have to do it. So it's not for me to say, I suppose.
There's a world of people out there that think that when a musician gets up and has an opinion about something other than music, there's a world of people out there that go, yeah, just play the hits. You're a musician. You're not entitled to have an opinion on the world, on politics. If that person was sitting in front of you, what would you say to that person?
Well, I kind of wonder what people think songs are written about, you know? I don't mean that in a sarcastic way. I just mean like songs are thoughts and feelings about your life, about the world, about people you know, about things that you see. So, and I understand completely there's a balance to be struck, especially on the internet. Like people, you know, if it's like an actor they come to that page because you're an actor that they like. They didn't come here because they really loved what you think about Cuba or whatever. But, you know, I do think there is a balance to be struck between those things. And especially if you've got like a younger demographic, like what you say does matter. Like I notice that even like when we play shows, like girls do their makeup the way I do, or they wear similar clothes and things like that. And I'm like, so in that moment, that's a very benign thing, but it shows that what you're doing is impacting people in that way. So you can't just shoot your mouth off and not think about what's coming out of your mouth. And I guess for us, it was frustrating initially when people were like saying that it was such a political activist band, when at that point I don't think that it was necessarily. Even now, I don't think we're not raging against the machine. We're like just saying common sense things. But at that time, we were talking common sense about something that was directly impacting us. So when people were like, you shouldn't talk about that stuff, I'm like, well, why shouldn't I? Because it is part of what's happening with the band. So,
For somebody that's never stood up on a stage before and never toured the world, how do you describe the experience at the end of an incredible show when everybody's there with you in the moment? What does that actually feel like?
It's quite surreal. I don't really know if you get used to that. I don't know. I feel like it's a weird hybrid because in some ways, it's such a collective moment, but I guess I feel it's weird because you're in a room full of people. You're like, oh, all these people like know me, but they don't know me. Do you know? And so it's like such a strange moment of like extreme exposure but extreme isolation, I suppose.
How do you work out where the line is then? Like, if you're working out, if you're putting cultural product out in the world, you're putting a chunk of Lauren out in the world. It sounds terrible and has to go down as like my
I do
worst
that every
analogy.
morning, 20 minutes after a cup of tea. No. Sorry.
And
You
that
laid it out like, well, not laid out. Like, you know, it was an open joke goal. I had to just chip it
well,
in.
that just became the promo for this.
Just regular. It's great. That's what the health juice is for.
Yeah. This whole event's been brought to you by Metamucil. When you are working out how much of Lauren to put out in the world in terms of your life, where is the line? Where do you work out the line?
I think we just kind of listen to our gut to an extent. Because I think I'm conscious that I want it all to be like honest and authentic, and we're like that when we're writing, and I think that we're like that when we're performing and when we're talking and things like that. But I do think it's such a weird job, it's such a weird industry. I think for me, I just need some stuff to just be mine, and I guess for me that's like my friends, my family, my partner. That's mine. Like just because I feel like, you know, there's so much analysis on everything that we do, and I don't really want that to be in my free time. So, yeah.
When you went through that process of working with different producers, because you guys had been a unit, a 3-person unit for so long, when you are embarking on working with a fourth, how do you keep the essence of CHVRCHES pure, right? How do you go, no, this is what we are, even though you're a new person bringing in influences and can help us change or expand, how do you kind of go, no, this is the core of what CHVRCHES is? Or did you have a conversation about that before you launched into those, the producer speed dating?
Maybe it sounds so cheesy, but I think we just kind of know, you know? Like, we've worked together, the three of us, enough. I think we have a pretty good understanding, and we're good at reading each other. And I think we're really lucky that at this point, even though we like different things a lot of the time, when we're listening to music separately, like when we come together, it feels like we're still definitely all on the same page in terms of what we want to make. So we would just know, unlike you know, after we would leave the studios each day, we'd be like, "You're a nice guy." Nah. But, you know, and you can tell, like, you can feel like the energy of something if it's going well. And that's what we felt with the people that we ended up working with, you know. And there was definitely ones that were like really interesting and they're really nice people, but it just didn't feel like it produced anything that was like exciting to us. And, you know, there was ones that were really rubbish. So, but I feel like that's, like, we're kind of lucky that we know that we don't have to do that stuff, you know? Like, we've made 2 records completely by ourselves. So there was never people, like, with a gun to our heads be like, you have to go do this. So it was more like an exciting thing to try. And then we knew that we could all just go back and do it ourselves anyway. So, yeah, I feel like that's what makes it fun.
Out of curiosity, obviously without naming names,
Yes.
what's the worst thing a producer can do when CHVRCHES go meet them? Like, what's the instant like, oh no, we're definitely not working with that person?
I feel like each member of the band would have a different answer.
What's
to that,
Lauren's
but,
answer?
I personally don't like it when they suck up to me super hard and pretend that nobody else is there. I feel like in there, it's really short-sighted, you know? And maybe in some bands that works, but I find that quite telling about that person. I was like, you're not really here to try and work with the band and write a song. You're here to, like, make contact and do a connect and and a lot of, like, don't be on your phone when someone's going through their demos and playing you stuff. Don't be like, you put your phone down for 10 minutes. Like, come on. And, yeah, Instagram's not that good. You can, like, wait 10 minutes.
It's still going to be there.
Still going to be all the stories at the top. They're going to keep.
You are going to be on stage in a matter of hours.
Yes. Ooh, if we were awake. We've only been here for a couple of days, and we keep, like, randomly falling asleep in places.
That's just, like, where did you come from?
Where were we? We were in the UK and Europe.
Oh, that's
so, like,
a long trip.
yeah.
Of the new songs off the new album, what's the one you're most excited to play to the audience this afternoon?
I think a song called Graffiti. It's like the opening track on the record, and it's one that we all really loved, but we didn't really know. You know, there's some songs you're like, oh, this would do better on radio, and there's some songs you're like, you'll she liked that.
Yeah. There's always
She
one.
was
It's like, yes, that's my song.
That one won't work on the radio. But you know, there's ones that you really love, but you don't think like you're not sure what people are gonna think. And from like the first handful of shows after the record came out, people seem like they've identified this one as like one that is special to them. So I think that's nice. I'm like, hey, this is how the music should work. Like it's chosen based on like feelings and emotions rather than like a pie chart in a label office or something. I don't know.
Are you? This is a good, weird question, but are you ever surprised at the success that Churches has had?
Constantly, to be honest. Yeah, well, when Ian and Martin got together, because they were writing stuff before I came along, and I think that they'd either thought they would do something just the two of them and put it out online, or they were maybe going to try and write songs and pitch them to other people. We never, and then I was like, oh yeah, I'll sing some like backing vocals on that, because I knew Ian from recording my other band. It was never really, like, we all had like jobs and stuff. Like, in my mind, well, Martin was about to kind of give up music, I think.
Become a history teacher, right? Yeah.
Whoa, you did your research.
I have my moments.
But yeah, I don't know. So I kind of feel like maybe that's, maybe if we'd been thinking about it differently, we would have made different stuff. But yeah, I think about it a lot. I'm like, oh, it's pretty weird. Every time we go on a plane, I'm like, whoa, still going. No one's figured it out yet. Okay.
You wait, when you go see the show at the end, she'll be like, oh yeah, this is still working. This is still good. Hey, Lauren, thank you so much for sitting down with us.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming. Thanks for having me.
And enjoy the rest of your Splendour. Then let's bring him on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, Henry Rollins! How has your Splendour been so far?
Oh, it's been great, actually.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What's been the most interesting interaction that you have had? Because you are a man that has amazing interactions with everybody you meet. This is what I've realised over the years.
The most interesting interaction was here
Really?
yesterday. Not with you, yet.
I mean, the night is young.
But I was on a panel, and the topic addressed was Me Too 2018 and going forward. And so I was the one male on stage with a bunch of incredibly smart and articulate women coming from, one was a lawyer, one was an activist, journalist, two recording artists, coming at Me Too from a lot of different angles, and then an American male perspective from the land of Trump and Harvey Weinstein. And so what everyone said was incredible, like amazing. And so that was the high point of the thing so far as interaction and learning something.
That's really interesting. So you recently did this this series where you interviewed a whole bunch of really interesting people about, and my interpretation of it was about masculinity and machoism, which is not a word, but let's imagine that it is. So, and it struck me that a lot of your work has been concerned with men and masculinity over the years. Or at the very least, there's a masculinity that runs through a lot of your work.
Well, that can be said. The project that he was talking about is a project that I really like, that I also got a ton of grief for. Last year, Mercedes-Benz contacted me and said, we would like you to come to Australia and interview a bunch of people to assess the idea of Australian toughness, drinking culture, tradie culture, farmer culture, and just this, the Australian sense of masculinity, toughness, and get it from a lot of different angles. And I said, if we can do it unflinchingly and really drill down, I'm in. If you're going to soft sell it, basically it's a car ad with some interviews.
Yeah.
And I knew I'd be getting a lot of slings and arrows, so I said, well, I like the topic, knowing that there's a lot of male suicide in this country, tradie culture, there's a lot of suicide, a lot of farmers, a lot of men who they don't know how to emote, so they hold it in and they drink it away, and then they kill themselves. So I said, I'm in. And so that was earlier this year, and I was here for about 3 weeks, and we interviewed everyone from Dave Graham, our amazing gay farmer, who's incredible and was made to feel like an alien in his own town from his own parents, and his story is great. We talked to farmers, we talked to a lot of tradies, and it became a referendum on suicide and the idea of what is the Australian male role in society. What do you take on yourself? Like, my father never hugged me because he'll make you soft, and there's all this stuff where it's imprinted, and all psyches are able to be dented. No one's that tough. Anyone can be broken pretty quickly. And so it was great to be able to deconstruct that idea and find the humanity in all these people. And when you ask them what's tough, they'd always say, my mom, my family, my sisters. I mean, like, it was always like, I'm not tough, it's them, it's someone else. They would always hold up in higher esteem. And so in my own writing and work, I've tried to assess my own masculinity. And I come from the music world, and the bolt of cloth I came from is pretty rough. So there's a lot of fighting, and a lot of people like having a swing at me, and I'd have to neutralize them. So I ended up getting in a lot of fights. I'm not good at it, but I'm still here. But it's not anything that I'm all that enamored with. I'm more fascinated. Like, why do we keep starting wars? Yeah. Why is that guy president? What's your problem? He's gay. Why do you want to beat him up?
Well, I'm curious about what you learned, right? So it's actually a really beautifully made series as well. It looks beautiful as well. But what I want to know is, what out of that process, out of that 3 weeks, what did you learn about the Australian man?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that Australian men are born into, and it happens in America too. Like, you're a man, therefore you do this, this, and this. And a lot of that is like, you fight, you drink a lot of beer, you get tatted up, and like, you have to be able to punch a guy out or throw the football the right way, otherwise you're not in the man club, and no one will ever like you ever again. And it's easily bought into. I mean, my dad tried to impress a lot of that on me, and the weird part was, he was a coward, a moral coward, an intellectual coward, a tremendous racist, an amazing misogynist, a record-breaking homophobe, and a PhD. He should know better. And his toughness was yelling at some Chinese guy in a car making some disparaging remark, like when I was 9. And I'm like, I'm supposed to be like you? No, I don't think so. And so I tried to fall very far away from the tree.
A tree on a hill, and you just keep on rolling.
I've always been fascinated by what's really tough. And so when Mercedes-Benz came to me with the topic, I was like, oh yeah, because I'd like to know. Because the toughest people I've ever met are the kindest, and the ones, and we had a topic on the panel yesterday called toxic masculinity. And they said, you're a guy, what do you reckon? And I said, well, that kind of tough guy, that kind of toxic masculinity comes from an insecurity. It comes from, like, someone got to that guy, like the school bully. You drill down deep enough, his bigger brother's beating up on him, or the dad knocks him around, or he's got the mean uncle. He's acting out. He didn't come into the world this way. He got conditioned. I'm not excusing bad behavior, but when you drill down, you'll always find someone way more fragile inside who's covering up. And I think that's where a lot of that toxic masculinity comes from a dad that won't hug, from a dad that won't reason, he only hits. And I had a dad like that, and I had to undo it in school so I didn't turn out like him.
Well, I'm curious about the undoing process, right? Because it's amazing that you have that recognition very, very young. So how do you as a human being start to unpick that?
Well, luckily I had my mom, who I lived with her. It was like a divorce, 2 days with dad, 5 days with mom. And she has perfect taste in music, so I was raised on like Stravinsky, Bartok, Miles Davis, show tunes, Streisand albums.
All stuff I associate with Henry Rollins.
But just, super eclectic. Well, a lot of that stuff I still like. But she would take me to plays. I would see like Hello Dolly, Porgy and Bess, like really cool stuff. A chorus line, Hair, Jesus Christ Superstar, really fun. And I'd see my father like, what'd you do this week? Oh, I saw Hello Dolly, fag. And that was like my dad's idea. I'm like, but the singing was really good. Like, I'm 12, you're really ruining my life. He was awful. And so I learned a lot from my mom, where my dad would say stuff like, that can't be right. Like the stuff he told me about, now that you're 11, I need to tell you about how to deal with women. What he told me on how to be with women, it's unrepeatable. I can't say it. It's so vile. I've never actually said any of it out loud. I can't. I'm like, you're wrong. I know you're wrong. I don't even know the ways of the world, and I know that can't be right. And so dismissing my father as anyone I can get anything from at an early age was very helpful. And I came up with that on my own, because he hated everything. And he was no fun to be around. So I said, okay, well, I can't go that way.
In your many, many years on stages, either doing spoken word or doing your podcasts and performing in bands, one of the things I've noticed is that you get a lot of interaction with your fans. People love to communicate with you. And I'm wondering, Of all the fans, all the people that you've spoken to over the years, is there one that you can't forget? Is there a fan interaction or somebody that has stayed with you?
No, because there's so many.
Okay.
It's not one, it's a bunch. Like the 16-year-old girl who says, I came 8 hours on 5 trains from a different country to come to your show because I needed to tell you that I got raped last year and no one believes me. And I just have to see your face and have you hear me tell you that. And I'm like, okay, I'm not a doctor. I don't know what to do. Or my son died in Iraq, and in his possessions we found 3 of your DVDs. And I don't know who you are, but I just need to thank you, and I want to tell you about my son. Okay. And they all live here. You know, you go back onto your tour bus or wherever, and they're all like, hey, remember me from a minute ago? You're like, yeah, I can't forget. Yeah. And I have 30-some years of stories that'll kill your lawn. I mean, just really tough stuff. And none of those people are forgettable to me. So I got as many as you got hairs on your head.
What's the toll of that on you?
The toll?
Yeah.
I've become an incredibly empathetic and patient person because these people are worthy of respect because they're truly, and it's kind of difficult being that way because then you have to stop and face the truth. Everyone's got a point of view. Everyone has a valid point of view. It's valid for them, like mine is for me. And when they say, hey, I have to say what? I can't say, sorry, I didn't hear you, I don't have time. I'm like, okay, what? I just have to just sit and listen because I must respect it to a certain degree.
Yeah.
And I am busy. I got to go, like, hurry, 3 minutes, I'm on stage. I got to go. But what has taught me is that no matter where you go, everyone is struggling with something. Everyone is ashamed of something. Everyone's covering something. And everyone has something in their rear view, like, so embarrassing. And so on that, we can all kind of get along. We all have something about our physiology that we don't like. You're like, oh, well.
So many things, man. I could write a list.
You know what? Well, we all do. And you can find the most beautiful people. And like, you're on the cover of whatever. Yeah, but I hated them like, well, okay. And you realize everyone has a gotcha spot. And I've seen that anywhere in the world. I've been to about 100 countries, all 7 continents. And so, and there's no people who aren't scientists in Antarctica, but I met them there too. And so all I understand now is human vulnerability. And I try never to hurt unnecessarily. When I hurt on purpose, you'll know. Because I've been laying in wait and I'm going for you with everything I've got. Usually with a pen. But if I'm going after a politician or somebody, it's writing, but I mean every word of it.
Why you? Why do you think they come to you? What is it that you're putting out in the world that lets them feel he will understand me if I tell him?
Oh, because I think all my screwed upness it's right here. Yeah, you just see all my flaws. I come in with them. It's a big coat, and I'm like, oh, what a screw up. That's me. And so, and maybe I'm not judgmental because I'm not perfect. And so it's hard for me to go, well, you're a screw up. I've screwed up so much as humans do. So it's hard for me to say, you're that, when that person say, yeah, but you're these 5 things that really suck. I'm like, no. And so maybe there's that. I've written a bunch of books. And a lot of those books, the writing is incredibly naked. I mean, just put it out there. And a lot of people have said to me, I like your music, okay, but your books saved me. I have one in my backpack right now. I never leave home without it. Okay. And so I wrote a handful of those that those books plus puberty, they kind of start to go together. And sales-wise, which I don't keep track of, but we keep reprinting them. So someone's reading
Somebody's
them.
written them.
Yeah. And so I think that's why, and also the music was always very intense. The lyrics were very, here it is. And I think people go, oh, I can tell him something and he won't walk away. It could be that. My friend Ian Mackay of the band Fugazi, who we've been best friends since we were 12, he gets the same kind of letters and, dude, you know me, man. And in a way you do, as we all kind of sort of know each other.
What's the most memorable bit of scar tissue, physical scar tissue you have on you?
Okay. This is a Black Flag logo. I know it looks like a barcode. You can't see because you don't have binoculars, but there's a stripe of scar tissue going through the last bar. It looks like a little white stripe. You said scar tissue, right?
Yeah, no,
That's a
I
scar.
meant it. Because I knew of most people you had actual physical scar tissue.
My face is covered with scars. That's mainly boots and ringed fingers and bottles and ashtrays. The legs are mostly cigars and cigarettes. But this one scar, I did a show somewhere in the great, beautiful American Midwest, and like all 12 people showed up, and I'm going to be sleeping on the promoter's couch and getting on an Amtrak train the next day.
What year, roughly?
86 or 7.
Cool.
I was 20-something, and we're walking, me and the entire audience, we're all walking to our cars. I'm getting into the car with the promoter. Like, we left en masse, because there's like, you could fit all of us in a van. Anyway, you hear screams at an event, you're like, woo! Like, okay, someone's having a good time. Then you hear a scream, and you're like, okay, and something twitches in you, like, that's like an unhappy scream. That's someone's in danger. And we all kind of stopped, and you hear like a woman screaming for her life. And like, when you hear it, you know it. You're like, wait a minute, something's wrong. It's coming from this way. So I ran that away, and I see this man assaulting a woman. And I just went for him, pulled him off her. Let's see, I started by smashing his head into the back of his trunk of his car, and then held him by his ears and bashed his face in. And then I grabbed him and started punching him, and that's when he started scratching me. And that's how I got that. And so I was hitting him with my left hand, and I'm not good at any of it. And so he got away from me and curled up into a ball because he was very hurt. And I saw my thumb was now going this way. It was down. I was like, okay.
Very much the wrong direction.
This is going to hurt. But I figured out how to do it. I'm going to pull out, up, and down. So I got in the front of his car. His headlights were on. I think he was trying to abduct this woman. So I went 1, 2, and all I could see was blue dots of pain. It was like almost passing out from the pain was incredible. And I'm like, 1, 2, pow, and it worked. I was like, okay. And I said to the lady, I said, are you okay? And she said, yeah. He didn't get me. I said, okay, do you mind if I go? Because that's assault. What I just did, that's what they call it. I'm too good looking to do time. So if you don't mind, I'm going to run before the cops come, and I suggest you call them and file a report, and I'll just be some guy and you don't know who I am. And she said, okay. And I dashed away, and the next day my arm was like swollen. It was so painful because I, relocated my thumb. And I never got that scar patched in, even though like tattoo guy, hey, I can fix that for you. No, I never want to forget that night because I was just so glad I was there because I don't know what my constituents would have done in that situation.
So most people have a fight or flight response, right? And having listened to you over the years, I've kind of come to the conclusion that you lean more towards the fight direction in most instances.
Just depends. I mean, sometimes you have to fight so you can flight later.
In that instance.
Well, you have to neutralize so you can walk out.
Have you ever been paralyzed by fear?
No, and I'm not a tough guy, but the times I've been truly scared, I was amazingly clear. And the time I was the most scared was when a gun was at the back of my head, and the guy was saying, if you scream, I'm going to blow your bitch head off. And he kept hitting me with a gun. And I said, okay. And he said, we're going to go into your house, which means they're basically going to rob me, put a pillow over my head, and execute me. So I said, I got a few minutes left. What do I do? I just tried to, it was me and my friend and 2 gunmen. So a gun at my head, gun at my friend's head, and we're being walked in a line. I had the house key, so I'm first in line with a gun, a revolver at the back of my head. So I was trying to slow everything down. So I had to think clearly. So I was like, okay, I got to slow this down. I can fumble with the key. I have a VCR in the living room. We'll unplug it and give him that. So we won't get him if I go into my bedroom, he's going to kill me. I don't know why I'm thinking that. I'm just figuring out how do I keep us alive. And I was amazingly clear. Like, no, I'm going to flip him over. I was just like, okay, slow everything down. And so I opened the door, and I heard gunshots behind me. And I stood there. So I was carrying my own groceries. I had my groceries. I put the groceries down, put my hands up. Like, why am I holding my groceries? I was, you're nuts. And I put the groceries down, put my hands up, and I heard gunshots. And I heard one thought was, gunshots sound really strange in this room. And then my legs left and took the rest of me. My legs, well, I guess I'll come with you. And I ran out of the back of the house, up the alley, and called the cops. And they cuffed me. I called the cops, and they turn up, and I'm waving from the phone booth. I said, me and my friend just got robbed. Then I called my girlfriend, and I said, we just got robbed. I don't know what happens next. And the cops grabbed me, threw me to the ground, and cuffed me, walked me around to the front of the house where my friend had been shot twice and killed. And so the guy shot twice, put two in my friend, put one next to me in the door jamb, and the cops said one went over my shoulder. They found the bullet in the kitchen in a box of Alka-Seltzer. It bounced around and dropped into a box of Alka-Seltzer, which I think belonged to my roommate who was killed. And that was the most sustained time of being in fear, where you're like, I'm going to die. I'm not getting out of this. Okay, well, how do I stay alive another 30 seconds and try and get my friend out? And that's a life-changing event. I mean, I've never truly recovered. I mean, it's PTS. You never get out. You just kind of learn to put it in your pack and keep moving. But as far as a state of fear, that would have been it. It's like a nightmare that you can't wake up from. Like another minute goes by, there's still a gun at my head. Like, I'm not waking up. This is real. And, it was probably like 3 minutes, but it felt like 20 years. Everything slows down. And that was the most time I've ever been in a fear moment. I've been in moments where okay, I'm pretty injured. Without hospitalization, this could be it. And so I've had to, get to a hospital to get stitched up or whatever. But that's like, this really hurts, and I don't want to lose my hand. So I better get somewhere to a doctor. But real fear is, I've had different levels of it. The most reptilian brain fear, where like, gotta go, was the time I was in what became South Sudan on my way to northern Uganda, about to cross the Nile. And there was some baboons. And I was in the front of a van with an NGO that drills water wells called Drop in the Bucket. And a man named Abwala was driving, big Dinka gentleman. And I said, hey, Abwala, can you pull over so I can get a closer look at the baboons? And he knew something I didn't know. I roll down the window. A baboon gets up and puts his face right in my face. They're huge, way bigger than I thought. And the thing went, Rrr! And I almost broke the seatbelt trying to get out. I was like, and it wasn't even fear. It's just like, it's your reptilian brain going, you better go that way. And everyone in the van laughed hysterically because I checked my pants like I'm still dry. Because the baboon was hoping for a sandwich, like scraps, because they're used to people driving by and throwing stuff. Yeah. I did not know that. Abwala did. And so the baboons thought I had nothing. He became bored of me. And he went, and went back down on all fours. And I was like, and Abwala looked over and said, so, did you get your closer look? And I was like, thanks. And that was a different kind of fear that I think I have only had once.
You maintain an incredible schedule. Like, you are constantly moving, and I think you might like it that way. I'm not sure.
I prefer it.
Yeah?
I could take time off, but I don't.
Why not?
It doesn't interest me. I come from the minimum wage working world. I'm nobody from nowhere. And I got a lucky break. My favorite band, Black Flag, said, hey, we need a new singer. You're a maniac. You want to audition? I'm like, yeah. And so I got in. And then I moved to Hollywood. And years later, director said, you're a maniac. Can you act? I'm like, yeah, I'm starving. Can you pay? And so all of a sudden, I'm in movies. Hey, you want to be on TV? Yeah, why wouldn't I want to be? I'm from the minimum wage working world of the 1980s. Yeah, of course I would. You want to be in a documentary? Yeah. You want to shoot one? Yeah. You want to direct one? Sure. And I just kept saying yes to stuff. And to this day, I'm the say yes guy. I figure it's all over next week.
What are the things you said yes to that you probably shouldn't have?
What did I say yesterday that I shouldn't have?
Yeah, of all the things you've said yes to, was there anything at the other end you're like, yeah, that one I maybe should have said no to?
Oh, a job. Yes. And I learned from it. There's a pilot I said yes to years ago. No audition. We like you for this part. It's a week of work. It's work. I'll take it. I work for a living. And I didn't really like it. The idea was bad, and all the actors were good. It was super professional. We all of us knew this isn't getting picked up. I mean, everyone knew except the lead actor who really wanted it, and he's a really good actor. You've seen him. He's great. I trust me, you've seen him in a movie, and you like him. This was going to be a big vehicle for him. It just wasn't a good idea. It had already been done. I knew that. And so I did the whole week of shooting over at Fox, like, don't really want to be here that much. And you can probably see it in the performance, where there must be a tell. I've never watched it. I can't do it. And so I learned never again show up if you're not at least 100% into it. And I've never done that again. That was 8 years ago.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Where do you find your calm? If you are constantly moving and you are constantly doing things, how do you find that moment to be calm?
When I'm on my own at home with the record player on. That's about as good as it gets as far as like, And that's how my weekends are. I'm working on something, but I have a good stereo system, so a cup of coffee, a bottle of the fancy water, the Perrier, only when it's on sale. Well, they want $2 for a bottle of water. I wait till it's $1.25, and I buy like 20 bottles. What are you gonna do? And so
Shopping tips with Henry Rollins.
well, just like don't spend money on a bottle of water. Anyway, just me and some good vinyl, strong cup of coffee, bubbly water, and an amazing workload, and that's how I'll be content from like 6 p.m. till 2 in the morning.
And when are you going to be back there?
I'm back in LA tomorrow because of the date line. I'm leaving tomorrow early in the morning from Sydney, and I'll be back in Los Angeles early Sunday morning, and I'll have a whole day of stuff I need to get done that I can't get out of. And so, and my weekly phone call will happen on Sunday as well.
What's your weekly phone call?
Ian MacKay of the band Fugazi.
Right.
We've been best friends since we were 12, and every Sunday, if possible, we talk for 20 to 60 minutes. And he has the kids, so he's always is all about the kids' schedule. I'm always on Sunday. I treat it as Monday light, so I'm always working. So he knows where I am, and so he calls me when the kid isn't wearing him out, running around somewhere. He's at that age. I think the kid's 38. I forget. But we're now on the kid's schedule because Ian's a dad, and so Ian calls when the kid is doing something where he's engaged.
Is there anything about your life you would change right now?
No, not that it's all that great. It's just that if I changed any of it, I'd get sued. Well, because I
know that needs more explanation.
Well, no, just because I've signed on for like 60 shows, and so I'm doing them unless something bad happens. No, I can't think of anything. I'm on schedule. I have a lot of book stuff happening. I write. I own the company, so I can be prolific. I sleep with the owner every night. So no one says no to me. I own the company, and so therefore I'm prolific, and I've never had a manuscript rejected. Hey, the women who boss me around at the office will say, this book is just like the last one. I'm like, just put it out. So I have a lot of book stuff lined up that's all on track, and that took a lot of work to get that stuff in line for publication. So that took years of getting them ready, and they're now ready. And one comes out in September, and then 2 next year. So I'm really excited about that. And so things are, I guess, as good as it goes for me. Is going pretty well.
Okay, just lastly before I let you go, when you were up on stage and you were doing, particularly the spoken performance,
Yeah.
How do you know when it's good? Like, how do you know when it's working?
Because any idea I bring to the stage, I rehearsed it on my own. I literally find parts of the San Fernando Valley, the 818 area code, where there's like nothing at night but dog walkers and joggers, and all the stores are closed. And I walk and say the stories out loud.
Do you know that might make you look a little bit like a not totally healthy person?
Oh, well, I'm not. But I could be on a Bluetooth. I could be, I could have the phone thing going. I could be having a meeting.
Yeah, you tell yourself that, Henry
Sure.
Rollins.
And so, but there's a lot of stunted, gray-haired men on the streets of Los Angeles talking to themselves.
That is true.
Yeah, and they're just lonely. Mark, don't be mean. And so, but there's something about hearing your own voice say the stories. It's another way the brain uploads material. And so I'll say the stories out loud, like I'll edit that, pull that. And so I work the stories in, or sometimes I just pace inside my house and just hear my voice saying the stories. And then I'll sometimes do them for this woman named Heidi who's been suffering at my office for 21 years. I go, hey, can I just roll this idea? She's like, oh, go ahead. And I said, oh, we'll fatten the Christmas bonus. Just listen to me. And I'll just roll them out. And she's really good. She'll go like, okay, that was good, but that part lost me. So I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, okay, fix that. And so by the time an idea gets to the stage, I've taken that on the road and wailed on it. Rarely is there anything on stage where I'm like, wait a minute, I'm going to be spontaneous. I don't believe in that. Other people are good at it. I'd rather come in super pre-planned so every comma is there. And so my objective to be on stage, what do I want to do, is be clear, to make sense, to have great impact in a minimum amount of time. And that comes through rehearsal, preparation, research. If I'm going to quote something, I'm going to memorize the whole thing so I can do the quote. And when I was in South Africa a few tours ago, I quoted the preamble of their own constitution because it's so beautifully written. And I said, do you know what that is? And a few went, huh? I said, that's the preamble of your constitution. It's fantastic. And like, how do you know that? Because I live alone and I just memorize stuff. You know, I got lots of time. And so a lot of preparation goes into the show. Like last night, everything I was talking about, that's exactly what I wanted to get at. And that was several nights I have 60 minutes. I'm going to be in Australia. My audience will be young. They might want to know, how can America have a president like Trump? How did America get there? What's the 3-minute explanation of that? I can give you the hour explanation. The 3-minute version takes a lot more editing. And so I did that. And so what I don't want to do is waste the audience's time. I value their time more than my own. And so I don't do the shows for money or fame or adulation. I do it for impact and for communication. I take the audience very seriously. I'm kind of obsessed with them. I am desperate for your attention, your approval. You have no idea. You would like me a lot less if you knew how much in fear of failing you I am. And that might make me good on stage, because there's not one show I've ever dialed in. There's not one show where I'm not like, okay, it's only yours to screw up. Because I only do shows by myself now, where I'm the only thing on the marquee. And if I screw up, it was a bad show. The opening band couldn't save it. And these people all had to pay for parking, babysitter. It is what it is. Next day at 6 a.m., they're back in a cubicle. I can't waste their time. So if I'm going to be slinging intellectual hash, it has to be of incredibly high caloric value, very lean and good for you. And that's why I travel all over the world, so I can put my feet on the ground everywhere from here to North Korea, where I've been. So when I have a story, it's the big one that didn't get away. So I'm not going to, hey, my dog did a funny thing. I can't, that's just not for me. I've got to give you better nutrition. So here's what happened when I was in Pyongyang, when I was in Tehran, when I was in Kabul, these places I've been to. Here's the different penguins I encountered in Antarctica. Gentoo, Adelie, and Chinstrap.
Chinstrap's the weird outlier there for sure.
I like them. They've got that cool thing on the jaw. The Gentoo is the most prevalent. We saw very few Adelie. Anyway.
I love that I went for the Antarctic bit of information. I didn't ask him more about North Korea. What am I doing? What did you do in North Korea?
Got spied on. It took me 3 years to get the visa. And I went because Condoleezza Rice, who used to be a political figure in America, like, it's on the axis of evil. They're very evil. You see the axis, they're all on it. And so my objective with the axis of evil is to go to every axis of evil country, come home with a T-shirt and a snow globe, and say, hey, they were cool to me, and deflate the myth. I mean, there's certainly bad parts of the world, America being one of them, at least a tough patch of real estate. But I hate this idea that some Americans have, like, Africans are stupid. Not as stupid as you are, pal. Or they like, well, them Saudi Arabians, find it on the map. Go, 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 go. Like, nope, that's Iowa. Like, they just, you know.
So similar in so many ways, though.
Yeah, but so I go to these places, and so my onstage stories are informed by the humanity that I encounter in Haiti, in Cuba, Taipei, like wherever. And that's how I inform my information. I watch a documentary and go like, okay, I gotta go. It's not good enough just to read about a place. I have to put my feet in it, smell it, walk over it, ask questions. And I've never had a bad time. I've been a lot of places, and the hairier the place, the more people are welcoming. Like, you came alone? I'm like, yeah. They're like, all right. Why'd you come? I said, I came here to meet you. And I shake their hand. They always invite me in, and you're in the yurt drinking tea or whatever, and it's all groovy. And I've had to defend my camera a couple of times. I'm forgetting where I was in Africa, Western Africa, Senegal. And some guy in New Delhi in a tuk-tuk tried to rip off my camera. I was able to defend it with my left hand, and I almost gave him a headshot with my left, but he got away from me.
Henry
I tried,
Rollins. I could literally talk to you for hours, but we do have to get off this stage. Ladies and gentlemen, can we all agree that he delivered value?
Thanks.
Thank you all so much for coming. Enjoy the rest of your Splendour. Have a good night.